Hi there. I know everybody gets stuck with painting at times. So what I've done is I've put together videos of me painting seascapes. I'm going to show you the sort of marks I use, the tools I use and the colours I use. And I hope that this will give you the confidence to do the same. It's about mark making, making a mark and leaving it and not fussing around with it. It's about using big tools, so big brushes. I'm using a palette knife quite a lot with this. I don't always use a palette knife, but it seemed to work with this. And it's about the thoughts that you have when you travel. So I always say to people, be observant, be really, really observant. Forget about everything and just really observe everything you see around you. The colours in the sky, the light falling on trees, the light coming through trees, dewdrops on leaves, everything. Even on a grey day, if you look up at the sky, you will see hundreds and hundreds of different greys. So just try and kind of build all that in, into your psyche, really. Just really absorb it, really enjoy it, really be at one with nature. And even if it's an urban landscape, you can do exactly the same. It's the sounds, it's the energy of the place, it's all those things. Just be open to them all the time. And you'll find that when you paint, it becomes so much easier. You have all these deep-rooted memories, and they could come from lots of different places. You might think of a sky that you saw one day and then maybe just paint the colours that you saw, and then, I don't know, light shining through a tree. It might not be a particular landscape, or it might be. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to show you how I paint seascapes. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to show you how I go about painting a landscape. Now, you can either use paper. This is a Japanese paper. It's quite thin. I would prefer a slightly thicker paper, but it is a lovely texture and it's not pure white. And I do think that if you don't cover the whole of the paper, and maybe you leave some of the edge exposed, then that colour works particularly well. Or, and this is probably my favourite, you can use a board. I like using boards because they're quite solid, you can do a lot with them, you can scrape into them. You do have to prepare them. You can buy these from art shops, ready cut to size. I've prepared this with a layer of satin medium. You can use gloss medium or satin medium. And then a couple of layers of white gesso. And that's to give it some tooth so that the paint sticks to it. The medium is to stop any discoloration coming through from the wood onto the painting. It's never happened to me, but if you paint something that you really like, you don't want to have it ruined in a few months. So that's what I tend to do. So I'm going to use the board. Now I've got my palette here, which is a catering tray, plastic catering tray, very straightforward. Several layers of kitchen towel and some greaseproof paper or parchment paper over the top, and this stays damp and it keeps your paints wetter for longer. So that's a really, really useful tip and I use it all the time. I'm going to get my colours onto my palette. I've already got some titanium white and some Mars black. I'm also going to use some cerulean blue. I always put out quite a bit of paint because you don't want to run out once you've started mixing. Cerulean blue's sort of a coldish blue, it's got green in it, and I'm also using ultramarine blue, which is a warmer blue, even though it's blue, because it's got a touch of pink in it. What else am I going to put out? Well, let's see what we've got here. I need a yellow. So I'm going to put out some yellow. So I've now got two of the three primaries, blue and yellow. I'm not going to put out any red yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it, but I might well use another blue. So I'm going to put that up here, and that's turquoise. That's all I'm going to do for the moment, because I just want to get some paint down. Now, even though this is a tiny board, I think it's about 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres, I'm using quite a big brush. So first of all, I damp it. It's always useful to have some paper towel just to make sure it's not too wet, but it's easier for the paint to sort of stick to the brush if you damp it first. And I'm just going to paint in the sky. Now, you have to make a decision where your horizon line is going to be, whether it's going to be high or low. So you've got a lot of sky and a little bit of landscape, or just a small amount of sky and a lot of landscape. If you stick it right in the middle, it very often makes for quite a dull composition. So I'm going to start about here, and I've got to make sure that my horizon is straight. That's really important. So I think I want it to be about here. Let's see, about there. And I'm actually drawing this on. Nothing more annoying than getting quite a long way through a painting and suddenly realising your horizon is squint. Now I'm going to daub of white, a little bit of cerulean blue, just not too much, and you can see I'm mixing everything with this big brush. Now, there's another colour that I'm going to add that I forgot to put on, but I'm going to put it on. It's a really useful colour, I think, and that's raw umber. Quite a dull, cool brown, but you can use a tiny bit of it in lots of your colours, and it just gives it a sort of this lovely richness to it. So I've got quite a pale-looking blue, which I'm just going to literally paint over. A little bit dry, that's better. Now that's just a beginning. I've got brush marks, but I'm not too worried about those at the moment. Now I'm going to use another brush, another large brush, and I'm going to, so you've got a lovely straight horizon there. We're going to come back to that, but I'm going to let it dry, and I'm going to paint in the sea, and the sea is going to be Cornwall because it's always a beautiful colour, and I'm just going to use a tiny bit, whoops, that's probably too much, of turquoise, cerulean blue, and cadmium yellow. Now that's quite bright. If I put a touch of that brown in, that will dull it down just slightly. Now I haven't actually mixed up lots of this, but so now what I'm going to do is I'm just putting that there, just so that I want a straight line. Nothing worse than a wonky horizon. Now it's quite thin, this paint, but it's just a start, it's just the beginning. Now you can see there's been a tiny bit of leakage there, so what I can do is just, oops, I've just now taken off everything, just paint that back in a bit. Put that back. Might have to go over that in a bit. Okay, let's not worry too much about that now. Now, I want to have, so that's my sea, that's my sky, and I'm going to have some foreground, which is going to be grass. So I'm going to use cerulean blue and the yellow. And I know that makes a really nice green. So I'm just going to, again, I'm going to put a touch of brown in that. Let's just make a bit more up. tiny bit more. Oh, I used ultramarine, didn't I? Never mind, let's just put that in. Mistakes are not always a disaster. There you go, it's almost, oh, isn't that a lovely colour? So I'm just really just putting in some dobs of colour. Okay, now we've got a lovely sky, the beginnings of a lovely sky, I should say. I'm trying to keep all my brushes for the right. No, that's not really working. Let's go and get my, I don't want all these lines. That's the thing that I really don't want. So I'm going to come in with and mix up more paint with a palette knife. Again, I'm going to have a touch of that, just a touch of that, because it just takes the edge off the colour. And I'm going to come in with this. It's quite thick colour. I'm making a mark, I'm leaving it, I'm not messing around with it. I'm going to get rid of that, because, whoops, I don't like it. Let's just take that out. And I'm going to take a bit of that. And again, let's just try and do this without. I just want to get some sort of cloud-like feeling, and quite often clouds are a bit grey over my sea, but I'm not worried about that. Let's not worry about that now. And I'm just trying to mix some different colours for the sky. And what I'm doing is I'm just laying quite thick colour over. Move it around. Let's put a bit of, there's quite often a bit of cerulean blue in the sky. Now, the thing that you really, I always say to people is when you go out, and I quite like that as it is, when you go out and about, you always must observe what you see. So when you're out on a walk or you're just wandering around, stop thinking about everyday life. It's very tempting just to think about all the things that you have to do. And just think about what you're actually seeing. Think about the colour of the sky near the horizon. Think about the colour of the sea. Look at the sky, and even if it's a grey day, you'll see hundreds of different shades of grey. That's really, really important. And that's what I say to everybody. Just keep looking. I'm going to mix up some more green. I'm going to mix a slightly darker green, and I know that if I use ultramarine blue, I'll get a darker green. And again, I'm going to use a touch of that just to take the colour down a tiny bit. And I'm going to put that in there. So I'm now starting to layer. I don't think that's dark enough, so I'm going to add some more of both. Mix it up. It's got quite a dark colour now coming in. I'm not adding any white to this because it often looks a little bit strange. Okay, now getting another brush, damping it down. This time I'm going to put, using it really quickly. I'm not thinking too much about what I'm doing here. Just want to get some darks in. Add a little bit of blue. That gives you a lovely grey, so you get these lovely colours. Always trying to make different marks, always trying to make a mark and then leaving it. Now I'm going back to the sea. Bit of white, too much white. Oh, I've got a lovely grey though. I'm going to have a grey sea. Tiny bit of the yellow again, because that's just looking too green to me. So I'm going to get my measure again, and I'm going to go over it. Okay, and let's go back to, the sea has lots of different colours in it, so let's just draw. No, that's far too blue. What are you doing? Far too blue. Let's just get that back to a turquoisey colour. More turquoise, a little bit more yellow. Get that green, feeling of green in the sea. Now, I'm going to just paint around those rocks. Quite quickly. So I want to add a splash of colour, and I'm going to do that with I'm actually going to put it straight there. Get rid of some of the paint on there and clean my palette and and put in some lavender. I'm going to make that lavender darker with some blue. Put a bit over here. Add a little bit to that. There we go. So it's starting to come together. This cloud going horizontally is slightly annoying me, so I'm just going to pull that down. I think that looks much better, and the same with that one. So already we've got a much more interesting sky, the sea is looking better, and we've got some interesting things going on here. Let's add some. That's a navy coming in here. I'm not sure that's quite what I want. So I'm going to have a little bit of red. Not a great deal, because I don't really want to use red. I don't want to use pure red. I want to mix it. And I want to mix it with this colour here. So that's really goopy to get a sort of a violet colour. Now that's gone far too red, so I have to add some more blue to my palette. So on the colour wheel, blue and red make violet. But you just have to keep on adding either colour until you get a colour that you actually like. I think I want even more blue. That's looking good now. There's quite a lot of mixing going on there, wasn't there? And I just want to just put in some lines. Now I'm using a palette knife pretty much all the time here, aren't I? But what I'm doing is I'm just picking up a bit of colour and I'm just moving it around the piece of wood, just to add interest, and so it's not all the same, you're not looking at all the same thing. And this is turning into a nice grey. Again, not thinking too much about it. If I start thinking about it, I'll ruin it. And again, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure about that. That sea. I'm kind of thinking about places that I've been. I thought I was using brown, but it turns out I was using black. And what sort of landscapes I remember. I'm going to make a bit of grey. a little bit darker. So my palette's now sort of moving around with me almost. Make that darker still. And I'm going to change my C. I'm not so happy with the C, so I'm going to make it a little bit, see what happens if I do this. It looks really flat and dead to me, that C, and the C just doesn't look like that. Whoops, not doing a very good job of holding this straight. Let's get some deeper turquoise going on. Right, so we've got a feeling of movement now with those lines that we just drew. Now, I'm going to leave this for a second. No, I'm not. I'm just going to get rid of that. There was too many shapes that were too similar going on here. So I just want to change that a little bit. And I just want to bring in some warmth. I think it needs some warmth. So I'm going to grab a, let's see, I need another brush. And I'm going to make up a sort of an olive colour. So let's see if I can, sort of a browny olive colour. So a bit of red, a bit of yellow, tiny bit of black, a little bit maybe of brown. Get that sort of warmth coming in somewhere. Where shall I put this? Alright, try a bit, make a bit more. Didn't make enough. The thing I said you must do, make enough. Is that too bright? That colour's particularly nice with the lavender because they're complementary, and that's just lifted it, hasn't it? That's just lifted it. How lovely. Isn't that lovely? But make sure the corners are all painted in. Pop in a little bit of the feeling of a bit of surf going on here, I think. And maybe even not quite, that's not quite there. Feeling of a bit of a beach. How about that? And then I'm just going to draw in a few marks with a pencil. And there you have it. And then just one final thing is I'm going to get I want to do the tiniest splatter of white, just to give the sense of the sun reflecting off that water. So this isn't pure white, this is just a sort of a mix of a yellowy greyish colour. There we go. And just touching it, whoops, slightly. Don't want that to be too obvious. There we go. Just fill in a few of these funny little white marks. So now all you need to do is to leave it to dry and enjoy.